If you wanted to, though, watch Lewis eat. I bet you could get some viewers.
We can live stream that all day.
Yeah. Yeah, eating a salad from what's the name of that place?
Oliver's.
Oliver's that Larry loves. Okay, you guys ready to start?
Yeah, sure.
Lewis, are you done chewing?
Probably not.
Okay, let's go.
Producer girlfriend, you ready?
Copy, we're ready.
I want to welcome everyone to the Four Esoterics. No politics allowed. I'd like to remind everyone this podcast is being recorded. We follow Carlin's rule with one addition. Please be wearing pants. Let's welcome the Esoterics. We're -1 today. He's at some sort of event. So we're here with Ben Boychuk, managing editor of AM Greatness. Yes, that is Louis Esoteric Fine, not his twin brother, Lorenzo. And I'd like to remind everybody they could find us at the number 4 ESOTERICS. You can find us on iTunes, Twitter, the Apple Podcast Store, and please like us, subscribe to us, show us your complete and undying love. Welcome, everybody.
You nailed it. That was great.
You did a great job.
And the topic for today's show is, some of your childhood favorite movies and movies that you could show your children. And I was thinking, producer girlfriend actually brought this brilliant topic to the table. You guys have children, I don't. But one of the things I really wanted to talk about was, sadly, we lost a great director this week who, we're all products of the 80s in this sense. And I think that was a decade that allowed children to escape. There was like a race of who could make the better escape movie for kids. And Joel Schumacher, who did The Lost Boys, and he also did St. Elmo's Fire. But I sometimes, I think of us as like, I feel bad for kids these days, Ben. Kids like your son who don't have those movies that they could identify with. There is no Lost Boys for your son.
Yeah, that's right. It is a little bit different now. Although I will say that my son, who just turned 18 a couple of weeks ago, has always loved movies, and he likes to go to movies, and he even likes. He took a kind of a leaf out of my playbook. He likes to go to movies by himself.
The best thing in the world. I can tell
yes.
you the first movie I ever saw by myself, The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford. Saw it on Route 4 at the Cineplex Odeon. And prior to that, I had this thing of not a phobia, but I thought there was a stigma about going to movies by yourself, and I do it all the time.
I do it all the time too. I do it at least a few times a year. Like if I get out of work early, I've gone to the movies by myself. I love it.
Which brings us to the point. My point being is we're sort of, the whole point of, I want people that are listening, we're sort of like this eclectic group of characters that sort of doesn't fit in to the typical mold of society. And not to speak for you, Ben or Lewis, but
I fit in.
When we were younger, there were things that were for us. We had the Goonies.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite lines from that movie was when he said, "Up there, it's their time. Down here, it's our time." Sean Astin. And it was that little line was such a remarkable little line because it was a band of outcasts.
Right.
And I don't know when they stopped allowing, kids to just be dreamers.
Well, I think, as I think what happened in the 80s was that, as sensational news stories about, the Adam Walsh murder and some of these other things, the McMartin preschool case, that gave rise to, the kind of helicopter parenting where parents, who maybe only had a single child as opposed to, in the 1800s where you had 6, 7, or 8 kids and half of them died at childbirth and the other half were killed by, I don't know, Indian attacks or train accidents. Whereas now, you've got one, and you can't afford to lose the one, and so we become a lot more safety obsessed, and so you just
and
don't.
cynical
And cynical, but you don't see. I know. Now in my neighbor, where my kids grew up, in Southern California, it is still common to see kids riding their bikes and going to the park and things like that. Um, but it's also certainly true that in other neighborhoods, other parts of the country, stuff like that can get parents arrested, for child neglect or abandonment, and so everybody's a bit paranoid, I think, about it, and so that's reflected in the culture, in the popular culture.
Well, and that was the time you're speaking to, when there was a Halloween. I remember a Halloween where we did not go trick-or-treating, and prior to that, we had not only gone trick-or-treating, but we had done so without parental supervision. There was this, it's now been debunked, but this misconception about the prevalence, on the one hand, of child abduction,
Right.
because of two sensationalized cases: Adam Walsh's son and Eton Pate's. And Eton Pate's became, because they never found him, the poster child, literally, for this wave of fear about child kidnappings. And
I'm just curious, by the way, how old were you when you stopped, just for perspective reasons?
I was 39. So, and the razor blades and apples.
Right.
Yeah.
There's never been a reported case.
Yeah, but yeah, that's. Ben and I, we talk about this a lot, about obviously in the political world with the cynicism. I also think that's permeated through Hollywood. Sure. I think there's a certain thing in Hollywood where, even in cartoons, they're trying to send out messages. There was no messaging when we were children. When we were kids growing up in the 80s, the messaging was, we understand that not everybody fits into a mold. Here's a certain type of movie, whether it be The Princess Bride, whether it be The Goonies, like I said, whether it be Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
We were allowed to be kids and escape.
Right.
And I don't think that has so much to do with, I just think that it's not. I think somewhere along the line, whether it be, these directors that have gone through the universities, they did it through I don't know.
I'm not sure. Go ahead, producer.
I have 7 movies on my list, and only one is from the 80s. So now I realize my criteria for this topic might be a little bit different than you guys.
You're going to be like Home Alone 1, 2, 3, 4, and Beethoven 1, 2, 3, 4.
No. I mean, the first one I thought of was the movie Miracle.
A great movie, exceptional movie.
The hockey movie Miracle,
yes.
Which was 2004, I believe.
But this is where,
coming from a hockey family, that's
producer girlfriend, this is where I'll disagree with you on. I agree with you. Miracle was an incredible movie, but it was also a reality sort of movie. So it's like sort of take Seabiscuit out of the equation, or Secretariat. Movies that are based on feel-good true stories.
I would say of my 7, and I just revealed 1, I would say 5 are reality type movies.
Okay.
They're not, and one of them I think you could classify as a dreamy movie.
We eagerly await. Caroline L. wrote Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Obviously, that's another one of everybody's favorites. But my first movie experience, Lewis, and you'll appreciate this. This was the first and last time I ever went to a movie with my father, and he took me to see The Black Stallion when I was 3 years old.
Stop! I was about to mention that film. Now, I've never seen it in its entirety. I watched the beginning with my wife, and I thought you were going to say The Chosen. But go on.
that was close, and it was between The Chosen and The Black Stallion. And I ran around the movie theater. because the horse. I just started running around the movie theater, and my father was chasing me what I think was probably like 45 minutes, and that's the last time my father and I went to a movie. But my point that I want to make is, if you had said to the director, that director was sitting in the movie theater and he saw a little 3 or 4-year-old kid running around that movie theater, he would have said, like, escaping, he would have said, my job is done. This is the reaction I want from this movie that I created.
Well, two things: that the director, that little known guy known as Francis Ford Coppola. Secondly, if and when time travel is possible, I am going back to the year for the theatrical release of The Black Stallion, and there is no doubt my pants are coming off, and I am just going to be like an arsonist, pleasuring myself to the sight of fire to see your father beating you with his belt because he had to chase you in the theater when he finally got you.
He was actually very kind. We just never went to a movie again. And on that note, let's so we're discussing today movies that you could show your children, that you want to show your children, that are age appropriate. I brought up Joel Schumacher dying with the Lost Boys, which I think we could all agree was a pretty incredible, fun movie, right? I mean, it was fun. And St. Elmo's also. St. Elmo's is more of a movie that's been, I would say, is a cautionary tale for teenagers and young adults.
Yeah, like The Outsiders too.
But
which they read in middle school still. I think that's when my son read it. I think my son read it in middle school. But and then they watched the movie. I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I was thinking back to, I used to go to the movies with my parents, but usually it was my mom, but sometimes with my dad. But my earliest memories of seeing movies with my mom, I remember the very first one, which was Bambi, which had to have been a re-release in the early 1970s, so maybe 1974 or 75. But the other one I remember that I saw with my mother twice, California Suite.
Oh, what a great film!
Yeah.
What a great film! And
but not a kids movie, right? I mean,
I first of all,
it's
directed by Herbert
Lewis. Just so before I want to tell you, so I was on the phone with my mother, and I thought she took me to a movie when I was 6 that I thought was Poltergeist, but it wasn't. And she took me to see Little Shop of Horrors because she thought it was like a cute little movie.
With Rick
she didn't
Moranis?
realize that a 6-year-old, like the dentist scene and all that stuff, might have nightmares from that movie. So it's funny that, Little Shop of Horrors, we could all agree, is a great movie, but it's not 6-year-old age appropriate.
California.
Since we're on the subject of parents showing us inappropriate movies for our age, I watched Dirty Dancing, and that's how I learned about the birds and the bees. And my mom very kindly asked me questions like, what do you think of Patrick Swayze? Do you think he's handsome? Yes, Mom, I think he's handsome. Do you think Jennifer Grey is beautiful? Yes, I do. Who would you prefer more, Jennifer Grey or Patrick Swayze? Patrick Swayze, Mom. Like, my mom used this iconic movie for me as a young child to figure out where I was going in life. And then she would pause and explain everything to me. And that was how I got the discussion about where babies came from.
By the way, Phil, just so you know, Phil wrote his first animated film was The Jungle Book.
So the takeaway from Producer Girlfriend is that, having seen Dirty Dancing, she wanted a Jew of her own.
Yeah, and I wanted to go to the Catskills too. It looked fun.
Yeah, so
everybody knows, I want everybody to know this: the Catskills, and Lewis could probably agree to this and attest to this, was as romantic and fun as it is shown. I don't think you could even show the romanticism and the greatness in a movie of how great the Catskill Mountains were. And on that,
I am the product, in a way, of the Catskills. My parents met at the Concord Hotel. That should tell you how amazing a resort area the Catskills
And that was one of the last standing hotels. And on that note, when we come back from break, we're going to discuss movies because you guys are parents. I want to know what movies you guys want to show your kids, especially Lewis, you having a beautiful little girl, Ben, you having a beautiful little girl, and a sort of almost an adult boy. And on that note, producer girlfriend, can you take us to a quick commercial?
Are you looking for a salty, cheesy artisan treat? Check out Colleen's Better Than Breadsticks. As the country opens up, you'll be able to find them in more places. So check out the breweries, the wineries, and the gourmet grocery stores in your neck of the woods. Colleen's Better Than Breadsticks.com. Colleen with 1 L.
I want to welcome everybody back to the 4 Esoterics and find us on Twitter at the number 4 ESOTERICS. Find us on iTunes, YouTube's, and the Apple Podcast Store. And everybody, please just steal your friend's phone and have them like the 4 Esoterics. I have no problem begging. So please like us, love us. And one of the things I love about the topic we're talking about today is I don't have children. I have dogs now. And
the furry ones.
The furry ones. No, I actually have the fine hair ones.
I already made them watch Miracle, by the way.
And one of the things I want to talk about is movies that you've shown your kids. But one of my favorite, and I'll let you go. I just want to just say one thing, and I'll let you guys go. Is I loved Uncle Buck. It's one of John Hughes' movies that is sort of in the underrated John Hughes department. And have either of you guys seen Uncle Buck?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And there's that, and one of the reasons I bring this up is because I think, like, and the people, Phil and everybody that's listening, we're all sort of outcasts in society. And one of my favorite things is when he's in the principal's office and he says, and the principal says, your kid is a dreamer, a silly heart, right? And he says, I don't think I want to know a 6-year-old who isn't a dreamer, a silly heart. And I sure don't want to know one who takes their student career seriously. I don't have a college degree. I don't even have a job. But I know a good kid when I see one, because they're all good kids until dried out, brain dead skags like you drag them down and convince them they're no good. You so much as scowl at my niece or any other kid in this school, and I hear about it, and I'm coming looking for you. Take this quarter, go downtown, and have a rat gnaw that thing, the mole.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
love that scene because I almost feel like John Hughes was the protector of teens, was the protector of kids, in a sense of in the movies, so I will let it go to you. What movies do you want to show your kids, or will you,
Or have shown.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about when my son was, I think 10 or 11 years old. We sat down to watch Jaws.
45th anniversary was over the weekend.
Right. And I hadn't seen the movie in a long time either. It had been probably 10 or 15 years since I'd seen it. And I was wondering, how he would do with, people being attacked by this giant shark. And what stuck out at him, and he asked me the question in the midst of the scene where Roy Scheider's at the hospital after this terrible attack has occurred. And my son said, wait a minute, they let you smoke in hospitals? I said, son, they let you smoke everywhere.
I love can I tell you something? You know what's brilliant about that is that he's an observant kid.
Yeah.
Like take away the movie, that's something that's a very interesting thing to notice.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly, times have certainly changed. I hadn't, like I said, I hadn't seen it in so long. I had forgotten just how good John Williams' score is in that thing. Apart from those famous, 4 notes, I think.
So what else have you shown your daughter? What about your daughter?
So with both of my kids, I wanted to watch with them The Princess Bride.
William Goldman.
Yeah. And I wanted to gauge their reaction to it. And Benjamin loved it. My son loved it, but my daughter, not so much. I don't. She
Producer
never.
girlfriend, actually, I want to know your opinion on that, or Carol.
I would say it was one of the 4 films as a kid that I wore out the VHS cassette
Yeah,
tape.
I love hearing that. Yeah.
Like my mom would come and pick me up from my dad's on the weekend, and then we'd go to McDonald's, get breakfast, which I know sounds funny, but was delicious. And then we'd go home and watch a movie, and that was kind of our Saturday morning thing. So
Mhm.
The Princess Bride was always on rotation at my mom's house. And I've probably had that movie my entire life in some form of media. So
Yeah, I don't know. She just didn't get into it. She was bored by it, which is a little.
How old was she when she saw it? I'm just curious.
Well, this was a couple of years ago, so she'd been about 10.
I gotta say, it's for a 10-year-old. The Princess Bride is one of those rare movies that is for adults and for children.
Mm-hmm.
So at 10 years old, you still might be a little too young to get all the nuances of that sort of movie. And let's be real, there are some scary scenes in that movie.
Sure.
I mean,
Yep.
it's not like, we love to like tell the tale of the Princess Bride, but but Andre the Giant was just magnificent. I might
take this a different way and say that maybe the idea of fantasy for a 10-year-old girl now was different from the idea of fantasy as a 10-year-old
Right.
girl in 92. I
Yeah.
said, I watched it all throughout the 80s when it first came out. It was one of the first movies I was allowed to see. But I'm wondering with the media culture today that there's kind of a lack of fantasy, or as you were saying before, because of TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff, like people don't have to think about it. But maybe it's also just because the female gender is changing in the generations. And when I grew up, there was always a fantasy. You were like, some guy's gonna sweep me off my feet. I don't know if it's like that anymore for
except my daughter was always heavily into like the the Disney princesses, and in particular the like there was a whole series of Tinkerbell movies that came out in the past 10 years or so, and she likes that kind of stuff, but for whatever reason it just didn't click with her. And maybe in 10 years time she'll see it again or revisit it, and she'll have a different opinion of it, because our tastes tend to change too.
Louis, what about you as the father of a beautiful young, really bright girl?
Thank you. Films that I would
show her that you think she should be seen. Yeah.
Certainly Birth of a Nation, Triumph of the Will, Song of the South. Song of the South I saw in the theater. The first film I saw in a theater was the remake of King Kong, which on paper, the cast reads like an A-list of incredible talent. Jessica Lange, Charles Grodin, Jeff Bridges, Dino De Laurentiis.
Incredible cast.
Yeah, Dino De Laurentiis had produced it, and it was done by Universal. And I spilled my popcorn when that's my only memory of the film. I can tell. Well, I have many memories of the film, but that's the principal memory of the film. 2 movies I can't believe I saw in a theater as a child. One, my father took me to see The Champ. Did you ever see The Champ?
The remake movie, of course. Didn't he win an Oscar for that?
He did not. He won an Oscar for Coming Home.
Okay.
But there could, short of your father turning to you and saying, "Son, I'm dying," watching this on screen is traumatizing for a kid. What Ricky Schroeder is saying, "Come on, champ."
Yeah,
come on, champ.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The other, now I've never seen it in its entirety, because I think 10 minutes through at the theater at the Bergen Mall in Paramus, New Jersey, my brother had the equivalent of a psychotic fit induced by having seen the images flash on the screen of animated rabbit murder, Watership Down.
Oh yeah.
If you have not, now I haven't read the book, which has an excellent reputation, but the film adaptation is so brutal, even though it's an animated feature, that many parents went into this, one, unaware of the backstory, and two, thinking, well, it's a cartoon about rabbits.
Yep.
And they are mauling each other. But that's my preface to Judah's question. The first film I think I showed Olivia that we watched on my phone was Willy Wonka. Not the
Incredible, yeah.
Not the I've never seen. I
didn't
not
think you
watch
saw the remake. I would not. Ben and I would never accuse you of showing your daughter
Right.
the remake.
So here are the films
Yeah.
I've shown her. Now, for whatever reason, if I recommend a movie now, I have to I all but have to con her into and trick her into watching it. But I say to her, we saw this and this, and weren't those all good films? So we saw Willy Wonka, and at the end, after Gene Wilder does his bit, you get nothing. Good day. And Charlie returns to the everlasting gobstopper. She was the smile that came on her face, the sense of surprise and wonder and love when Willy Wonka said, "Charlie, you win. You win." And so we saw that. We saw, at the recommendation of a friend, Blackbeard's Ghost, which has Peter. It's a Disney film with Peter Ustinov and Suzanne Plachette and Dean. Was it Dean Jones? Was that his name from Love Bug?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dean
So we saw that. We saw Love Bug. We saw
Oh my God.
The World's Strongest Man. Like during that period of time in the history of the Walt Disney Company, when Kurt Russell, who was the last person to see Walt Disney, the man, alive, made just every movie for the Disney Company. They said, it doesn't matter what it is, you're in it. And we'll also get Phil Silver's Escape from Witch Mountain.
Did you ever show her The Bellboy?
No, she hasn't seen it yet. But I'll tell you what we watched more than once, and way above her head. And yet we quote, she was probably 5 when I showed it to her, and we still quote it. Heaven Can Wait.
John Douglas has challenged you on the Kurt Russell story.
Well, in a moment. Heaven Can Wait, which she and I quote to each other when I say, "Joe," and she says, "This is not a dream." And I say, "I'm not supposed to be here, but you are." And then I do my Julie Christie. I'm like, "Your voice, it sounded so familiar. You're the quarterback." And she says to me, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And instead of saying, "Would you like to get a cup of coffee?" she says to me, and it's so cute and endearing, "Would you like to get a piece of coffee?" And Seems Like Old Times. She loves that movie. She's seen it 3 times in a row.
Wow.
And what's
Flight of
welcome,
the Navigator.
Oh my God, that's another great one. Let's welcome Kim Delaney, and we are going to go to break in a second. But I just want to read something, a few of the comments from Carolyn McCoo. She wrote, I'm a children's drama teacher, and over the last 20 years have seen a huge difference between children's imaginations, particularly in girls. She wrote, I think the introduction of social media has had a huge impact on that. And also, Walt Disney, supposed last words were Kurt Russell, but he wasn't there. So that's the challenge. John Douglas,
sorry, I'm late, guys.
I'm just glad that you made it.
Yeah, we're just glad you made it. Better,
Better late than
rough
never.
morning.
This is Hollywood, Kim.
I needed a little humor. I just
This is Hollywood. And Louis, I am fascinated by the fact that you are a wonderful father, and you've shown your kids these amazing movies.
About Flight of the Navigator, which was the first time I had seen it. I saw it with Olivia. There's a document. Oh, thank you. And Kim, can we put Kim on screen for a second?
No, she has to talk in order for us to see her.
No, Kim, can you talk, please?
I can talk. Yes, I said I like your haircut. You look good.
Thank you. And my 2 more.
All of it.
Two more earrings, 1 per ear, and you are allowed to make your own. You can become a Keisha, a Shaniqua. In this time of trouble, turmoil, and upheaval,
Oh my
2
if you knew mine
earrings.
recording.
How come you
I'm not
didn't
gonna
make
go
your,
through
Lewis?
time
Speaking
more.
of that,
I
you
need
could have
to-
made your beard into a
I
certain.
could have been an Uncle Remus.
Yes. And anyways,
could
on
have
that
come-
note, let's take a quick break. Let's welcome Kim to the show. Kim, we're discussing movies that, and it's actually, I love when Lewis is talks about his daughter and the movies that he showed her. I love the
Oh, he
movies
loves
that
his
Ben-
little girl.
And Lewis somehow managed, the gods were shining on Lewis one night. And I think we could all agree on that. And Ben too. And you too, Kim, and me with my dogs. So on that
I don't
note,
know how.
you are listening to the 4 Esoterics. That's at the number 4 ESOTERICS. Subscribe to us, like us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, steal your friend's phone, force them to like us. And Ben, on that note, take us a little break.
Well, sometimes if you're seeing this, you might be seeing it on at the American Greatness website, and you might have heard about this show through the American Greatness Twitter feed. Check us out at amgreatness.com. We don't talk about politics on this program, but American Greatness is replete with politics, with excellent writers like Conrad Black, Roger Kimball, Julie Kelly, Victor Davis Hanson, Mark Bauerlein, Adam Mill, Ned Ryan, and on the roster goes. Again, that's www.amgreatness.com, American Greatness.
And welcome back to the 4 Esoterics. Kim Delaney, for real, is with us. And Phil had brought up E.T., which is, I don't know how we forgot about a movie.
We didn't. We just didn't get to it yet.
We just didn't get to it. But I want to say,
I actually have a great story about E.T. with my little boy.
Yeah?
Yes.
And at that point I was living in Woodland Hills. Judy, you know this, right?
Yeah.
And he had his little cowboy chair. He was about 3 or 4, probably 3. And I would go check on him. I'm doing stuff in the kitchen, but I throw ET on for him. And I walk in and his whole face was like he wanted to cry. And I said, sweetheart, he goes, Mama, I want to cry, but I can't. I'm like, you're allowed to cry. Because boys are not allowed to cry. And he just wailed because it was at that last scene in E.T. And I said, you're allowed to cry, sweetie pie. It's a beautiful movie.
And
Yeah.
if you don't tear or cry to that movie,
but Jack,
you have no.
Jack, he was trying to hold everything in.
But you have.
I'll tell you why I would have loved to have been on the set of that film, because before they would shoot a scene with her, a 6-year-old Drew Barrymore take out the flask, and then she'd do like a line of Coke, and she'd say ready. And
eat Reese's Pieces. And eat Reese's
Pieces. And by the way, here's a little trivia. Mars and Company was offered the opportunity first to be the preferred candy of the extraterrestrial, and in the novelization of the film, E.T. eats M&Ms, and for whatever reason, maybe the studio wanted more money, or M&M Mars passed. Hershey sees the opportunity, and at the time there was a huge spike in sales of Reese's Pieces. That brand, I would say, E.T. made that candy, even though the candy existed prior to the film.
Without a doubt. And we are discussing, I got to harken back to what Caroline said about something that's happened in the past 20 years. And I always bring up this movie. We've discussed this topic before. There were TV shows on in the 80s, and there were movies on in the 80s that let the outcast children have a home. There was this from everything Stephen J. Cannell created to the movies that we've mentioned. And listen, Kim always jokes. I always joke with Kim about the movie that she was in, which was the Delta Force. But I wanted to be like Lee Marvin. I looked up to the guys like Lee Marvin and the Rat Pack. I'd watch Sunday morning movies like when I was young, really young, because you know how we are. We in New York, Lewis, we had WPIX. In LA, I'm sure Ben, I can't remember the local station, but you had the Bellboy on. You had, the original Ocean's 11.
For me,
Had
we
these
had
movies.
Sinatra on. We didn't get movies.
Well, Sinatra. We had Sinatra too because it was Ocean's 11. But you had these it was a different. I don't know where creativity got. I think creativity has mixed with a certain agenda. We don't have to talk about the agenda, Ben, and I would love to hear producer girlfriend's other movies that she wants to elaborate on.
Yeah, so let me preface by saying I went to film school for 7 years. And my criteria is not the same of Judah's. And I did think about what Judah would put on his list. And then I thought, all the stuff I thought he would put on his list, I took off of my list. So like The Princess Bride was on my list. I took it off because I'm like, okay, he would already show our kids that, right? So I already stated Miracle. I come from a hockey family. I think that's important. I did take off the Blackhawks 2010 Stanley Cup movie. Okay, but we'll put that aside. I'm gonna.
But you like hockey?
She loves hockey.
I love hockey. I love hockey. I love it. I'm a fanatic. Best musical of all time, South Park movie. My kids would need to watch the South Park movie. Okay, that has every traditional musical element in it, plus it's the South Park movie, and it's
Is that a little rough?
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
A little rough for kids, no?
Well,
A bit.
Kids over 13. How about that? My list would be kids over 13.
All right.
Okay. I love how you have to preface everything. I went to film school
for 7 years.
For 7 years. Next, tell us about your 7 Emmys.
Okay, but there's a couple movies that you guys are going to be like, what is?
But we
what
can't
is
give
deal?
them too young. They can't
Okay.
have them too young. You have to shelter them a little bit.
Yes.
A little, just
as opposed to the movies that Lewis and I and Ben were shown.
Before they leave
My wife, I kid you not, I think the first film she saw in a theater, her father took her to see Death Wish.
Oh my God.
Anyways, go on. What are the other?
The first 10 minutes of the movie by Pixar, Up, where we see the couple in their lifetime together, which is almost like it's the preface to the rest of the movie. But I think it is probably one of the best 10 minutes of filmmaking and storytelling of all time.
Yeah, producer girlfriend, that's called the trailer.
Okay. And Phil is writing. Okay, and here's the thing. Let me preface something too, because Phil wrote Ants, and then there's Cars and The Incredibles. Animation actually took over the job of what those movies sort of did in the 80s. You're right. The only thing I could think of is the animated movies of today, because The Incredibles is sort of like that similar type of story. So go on.
Lion King.
Lion King. Yeah.
Oh yes, yes. Let me tell you about Lion King.
Please do.
In 2003, my son would have been 2 years old. So yes, in 2003, I saw 200 movies. 199 of them were the Lion King.
We're Lion King.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
That's amazing. Okay, producer girlfriend, go on.
Again, these are for older kids.
We have to make sure they have to be at least 10, possibly 13, but at least.
And just Caroline wrote The Lion King was one of the first movies I saw at the movies. Wow. Okay.
I'm gonna go with this. Every kid needs to see Schindler's List. And every kid needs to see The Bicycle Thief, which is an Italian film, and it's
I know the film. Yeah,
it's beautiful. I think anyone can actually watch the Bicycle Thief.
Producer girlfriend, that's quite. It's
that's a different level.
I think Sophie's Choice. Then,
whose life is it anyway?
Listen, you were the one who said the
what's the Leon Urie movie? I can't think of the name. Lewis, the Leon Urie.
Your Exodus.
The Exodus.
I don't know if I could get my son to sit down and watch those. That would be a task.
Killing Fields. Don't forget the Killing Fields.
Yes, Killing Fields.
Right?
Oh my God, Hang Nor. By the way,
Silkwood.
Just so you know, can I tell you something? This is where I happen to agree with producer girlfriend, because I saw The Killing Fields. I might have been 11 or 12 years old. And I think that movie should be shown in schools.
Yeah.
I think that was an incredible.
No, that is where we educate our children, Judith.
Yeah,
Like
that
through
was
all
an-
of this stuff, that's where
Yeah.
we educate our children.
Yeah, after I go
especially-
to Trader Joe's, I'm going to watch The Accused with my daughter.
But The Killing Fields, remember that Hang Nor actually,
Went
who
through
was
it.
first movie and he won an Oscar, actually survived The Killing Fields.
Yeah.
And John Douglas Lewis brought up the reason why Mars turned down the movie was because they felt like E.T. was too creepy. So they didn't want to be associated with a creepy candy, with a creepy movie, sort of,
Yeah.
you know, their
Really?
branding.
Oh.
I just wanted to say something because when you mentioned Black Stallion at the beginning. So Terry Garr, when you look at her filmography, especially through the 70s and early 80s, she's in some of the best films ever. So
Oh,
just
Mr.
randomly, so
Mom.
Mr.
Mhm.
Mom, John Hughes, which
Yeah.
John Hughes wrote, Black Stallion, Young Frankenstein, Close Encounters of the
Yeah.
Third Kind,
Yeah.
Tootsie.
One of the best movies.
She's
Jessica
just
Lange, amazing, of course.
just those
Yes,
five. I
always.
mean, just alone would suffice. But yeah, she's just been in a ton of stuff.
Richard
And
Dreyfuss is the equivalent of that. A guy that had a 10-year to 15-year run of incredibility.
Yeah, and then I decided to leave acting and methodically eat the surviving cast members of Jaws.
So wrong.
And
I worked with him a couple years ago, and him and I. And
There's
him and I-
there's no, like a Barbie doll. If you were to translate that into flesh, that the dimensions of the doll would not translate into her ability to stand upright.
You're talking
There's
about,
no you definitely rolled him, but there's no way that man stands upright unless he's harnessed.
And
Or
I,
he's-
as I always forgot to say, Louis Fine does not speak for any of us.
We don't even know who he is.
None of us have ever met him before. We don't even know if Louis Fine is his real name. And but producer girlfriend actually brings up a great point of age appropriate, like Kim, like you said. There's a certain time when you do have to show children the world, and sometimes the best way to do that is through film.
It's through film.
And
I didn't always do it the right way, but I made him sit down and watch.
yeah, well, you have. I mean, you know, and so Schindler's List. I wouldn't exactly show that to a 10-year-old. I might wait till somebody's 13
Like
years old.
14, yeah, 13.
13.
I'm gonna blow your minds. You ready? Here's a film. I'm gonna throw it right. You're gonna go, wow, Ice Castles.
Oh my
I don't
God,
know.
that was like, wasn't that with Robert Urich?
No, it was
That was Ice
Ben
Pirate?
Boychuk. You know who remembers Ice Castles is our publicist.
Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. I could have sworn Robert Urich was in a movie with ice in the name, but I could be, but I could be totally wrong.
Oh, Robbie Benson. Okay.
Robbie Benson.
I had completely
Oh.
purged this one from my memory banks.
Every girl of a certain age from the 70s had a poster of Robbie Benson.
How do you know this?
I think this is true.
Have you done studies on girls from the 70s and
I-
posters?
I was a stringer for 2 summers for Tiger Beat, and it was a well-known fact in the editorial offices in New York that he was one of their best-selling pinups.
So I gotta say, all great choices. What about
Yeah.
you, Kim? What movies did you show Jack? The
Well,
Lion King.
Like I told you, Lion King was a huge one. E.T. was a huge one.
And we've lost Kim's audio
Oh no.
or video. Kim, you could keep talking. There you
Oh,
go.
there she
You're
is.
back.
I know, like they call me.
Oh.
I showed him that. What was the Kevin Costner baseball film, Field of
Oh.
Dreams?
Field of Dreams.
But there's also Bull Durham.
Incredible. Sorry,
Oh.
Louis?
There's also Bull Durham.
Bull Durham, but I think you meant Field of Dreams.
That's the one I meant.
Yeah.
But he's probably, and so now he's older. So I tell him, because like from where he grew up, we grew up in LA. So there's a lot of people he knows, a lot of actors, blah, blah, blah. And like Jack Nicholson is one of the, he knows his daughter. It's one of his, he would come to the house and drop his daughter off. And I said, sweetheart, you have to go back and you have to watch The Shining. You don't even know who this guy is. You need to go back and watch his films. You've only seen like the stuff that has been recent, which is great, whether it's with
like
Girls-
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chinatown.
He's got to watch that. And I said, you have to go back. That's where you're going to understand what his acting's about.
Yeah.
So he's only seen Heartburn.
Probably. Or it's
as good as it gets, or Anger
yeah,
Management.
exactly. Or as good as it
He
gets.
hasn't.
You have to go back and watch
yeah.
Because now he's old enough, He's old
Speaking of The Shining, because there are very few Stephen King books that I've read. I haven't read The Shining, but I love that Stephen King hates that movie. Hates it. And it's such, I don't care if the movie is not faithful to the book. The film is great.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazing.
I just had to bring something up because Caroline brought this up. Okay. So she brought up Kubrick. We're discussing Kubrick quickly. And she loved The Clockwork Orange.
That one scared, and can I curse? That scared the shit out of me.
Yes.
I watched it at 12 o'clock in the afternoon because I knew it was going to scare me.
And I want to bring up something. Oh, sorry.
Watching the ocean, it still scares me to this day.
And I want my mom to close her ears for a second. But this is where I'll disagree with Caroline. No offense. We all know we're not the most politically correct group of chaps and chapettes, but I will honestly say that scene, the scene we know what we're talking about.
Oh my God.
Was not
horrifying.
I could see how people could look at that scene and say it was done incorrectly. That scene, that boys might have looked at that scene very differently than that he glorified rape is what I'm sort of trying to say. He didn't show rape to be a terrible thing.
But yet what I understand.
Okay, but
man, I understand that he actually was a very gentle soul.
Yeah.
So here's the thing though. I'm sorry. I see this is the true shocker about how marked the shift has been in a good way, because you can watch a film. It's a good film. Watch Paul Mazursky's Bloom in Love with George Segal. And speaking of Jack Nicholson, she since passed away, and I forget her name, but she had a child with Jack Nicholson. I know that narrows it down. But she was also she was in Five Easy Pieces.
No, she had no children. It was.
She was in Five Easy Pieces. She was in Played Against. She was in Played Against Sam. She plays Woody Allen's soon to be ex-wife.
Yeah.
So she plays George Segal's wife in Bloom in Love, and Chris Christopherson is in the movie playing a sort of kind of street hippie guitarist. And Bloom,
who I love also, Chris. He can do no wrong for me. I love him.
Mazursky and Phil wrote Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Right.
And
Bloom is trying to reunite with his wife, who wants a divorce, and he RAPES's her. And the next day at work, when he's asked about how his weekend was, he just says it nonchalantly. That's how culturally it was. You could, let's throw that in.
Yeah.
Name you're looking for.
You're right.
The name you're looking for is Susan Anspach.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
She was in a lot of good stuff.
Was she married to David Anspach? I have no idea. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to the Four Esoterics and with Kim Delaney, our famous guesoteric. And you can find us at the number 4 ESOTERICS. And that's Lewis's beautiful daughter giving us audio feedback. You can find us on iTunes, subscribe to us, like us. And we're going to go to a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the last one we're going to talk about is what are the movies that have inspired you to be who you are or who you are today? And although that's the same thing, what are the movies that have inspired you to be who you are? And on that note, producer girlfriend, can you take us to a commercial?
Are you looking for that perfect cup of coffee in the morning? Try Single Batch Roasters out of Riverside, California. It's the bean of
Give me 1
choice.
second. Be right back.
It's the bean of choice of Judah and me, the producer girlfriend. We drink it every morning. We love the full suspension blend, but also check out the blend that he makes from Brazil and also the stimulus package blend. Single Batch Roasters. Call Eric. Tell him we sent you.
I like that.
Does Eric have a number?
Ben, maybe you could do a crossover commercial for your place, since you've named the food in that place, and they could carry stimulus package coffee.
I'll take it up with management. Yeah. Well, does Eric have a number? How do we contact this place?
Go to singlebatchroasters.com.
There we go.
Sorry. Or you can go to, I think it's Eric at singlebatchroasters.com.
I'll tell you something very funny about that, Ben. A friend of mine got hacked, and his email got hacked, and the email was, I can't buy my niece an Amazon gift card. Can you please buy my niece an Amazon gift card? I've been sick. I've been under the weather, but there was no link. And I was like, this is the worst hack of all time, but I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Four Esoterics. We're talking about this topic right now of movies that inspired you to be who you are. And I'll say for myself, when I was about 12 years old, I know Lewis loves this movie. The movie that inspired me, it woke me up, it shook me to my core, was News Radio. And not news radio, talk radio.
Talk radio.
And with Eric Bogosian and directed by Oliver Stone. It was about
Alec Baldwin.
And it was about a radio. It's based on a true story about a Jewish radio broadcaster who got killed one night after his show because
Alan Berg.
Sorry,
Alan Berg.
Yeah, because of and I remember seeing that it was a play that Eric Bogosian had written, one of the most underrated talents that's ever been in Hollywood. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, what word could do, it just had a really, to this day, it's affected the way I think. So on that note, I'll ask you, what movie inspired you, evoked you?
So when we're kids, and I don't know how it was for you, but in the late 70s, early 80s, we were some of the first people on the block to have, full-on cable TV with the pay channels, like, the now defunct Z channel and early HBO and things like that. And so I would watch a lot of those movies on those channels. And I would, we would rent movies a lot. So, the kind of movies that I would watch when I was probably too young to watch them, 10, 11, 12 years old, were movies like Apocalypse Now. Or
John Milius.
And Brazil.
That Apocalypse Now, my former fiance showed that to his son and my son, so my stepson and my son, when they were 6 at the shore house, at the beach house in Malibu. I said, you can't do this. They started crying. I'm like that. Yeah. So when we're talking about age appropriate movies,
right,
that one was not.
I don't know. Can I be honest with you? I think you need to be 36 to be age appropriate for Apocalypse Now.
I don't think
but go on.
No,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you that.
No, that's a very good point. I'm not sure I was probably old enough to watch it the first time, but it was one of those movies that tattooed itself on my brain.
Yeah.
And I've probably seen it 100 times since.
Anything Milius did, by the way, just so you know, anything Milius did has tattooed, now that you bring that up, has tattooed it from Red Dawn to Magnum Force to Dirty Harry to even Big Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm. Big Wednesday.
And just every, Conan the Barbarian, everything he did sort of had
left an impression.
Yeah, left an
Conan
impression.
the Barbarian?
Yeah, it was Conan the Barbarian. If you rewatch it, it's sort of a beautiful movie.
I've never watched it. That's what I'm just saying. I've never watched it.
Yes, even it's but go on, Ben.
No, so I would say the one that probably has shaped my outlook on life, for good or for ill, is Brazil. Terry Gilliam's
Great film.
masterpiece,
Hmm.
which I saw.
How old were you?
Well, I certainly didn't see it in theater. It came out. I would have been 14, I think, when it came out. 13 or 14 when it came out, and so that's the time, when that period in one's teens. That's when all of your tastes are really shaped. The stuff that the media that you imbibe in those years, that's what sticks with you. That's the reason why, we all listen to the same.
And I want you to
music
think about something right now as you say that. We were watching movies with hope and sometimes scary. Kids are watching on Netflix that show called 13 Reasons Why, right? Which is about
Suicide.
reasons why somebody committed suicide.
Right.
That's what is being shown to children. And Lewis, what about you?
Monster with Charlize Theron really, I mean, made me a feminist. I'm just thinking of films that just resonate with me. Bad News Bears, Walter Matthau, great film.
Oh, amazing movie!
Another
Movie.
Another great.
Do you know the story of that movie? By the way, did you hear it?
I know it all. I know. Jack Lemmon used to drive out to Chatsworth.
No, let me say one of the kids said to him, "Hey, he said, what else have you been in?" Basically, and I'm paraphrasing, and he said, "I was in The Odd Couple." And I think The Odd Couple happened to be on TV that night, right? And one of the kids said to him, "You're not in The Odd Couple. That was Jack Klugman." Anyways, go on, Lewis.
But yeah, directed by Michael Ritchie and written by Burt Lancaster's son. So that's one that I love, because I had a Little League coach that was like the Vic Morrow character. He was a tyrant and thought he was coaching the real New York Yankees.
I hope your coach didn't have his head cut off.
No. He died anyway. The other good Walter Matthau film. Now it wasn't critically well received, but it resonates for me and it's touching. Is I Ought to Be in Pictures with Dinah Manoff and Anne Margaret and Walter Matthau, and it's the film adaptation of Neil Simon's play, and Dinah Manoff reprises her role. And I want to say that was directed by Herbert Ross, because if it was, that would also be part of the films of my childhood and young adulthood that I love that he did, including Max Dugan Returns, which was Matthew Broderick's film debut, California Suite, to come back to Ben, and a bunch of other stuff, some of it not so good, including The Slugger's Wife, also adapted from a Neil
Oh my
Simon
God,
story.
with William Peterson.
It's got Noonan, who from Caddyshack, and Rebecca De Mornay.
William Peterson. No.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay, and on what about you, producer girlfriend? Since you've been in film school
for 7 years.
The two movies that made me go to film school were Orson Welles' The Third Man, and the one that really kind of drove me into camera work was the 1999 movie American Beauty, which I still remember seeing in the theater and just being overwhelmed with how beautiful that movie was. So
even with Kevin Spacey, yes, and Annette Bening and the amazing Wes Bentley who was in that. I know Kim's is Francis, but what else, Kim?
Kramer versus Kramer.
Story. By the way, not only I saw it in the theater, great film, and this is why I respect her talent. I would never dispute it, but how dare Meryl Streep even intimate that Dustin Hoffman bullied her or was untoward on that set. He is exceptional in that movie. Won an Academy Award for it.
What? Did she do that on the set, or was that in the film? What? Tell me.
she years later, and when Dustin Hoffman got into trouble, however you want to define that, she had to add her 2 cents about how he had bullied her on the set and blah 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 blah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. It's like there's got to be a statute of limitations on
I do know there's a very funny scene, and I have to find it. I think it's with Dustin Hoffman yelling at a director with the. I'm gonna have to find it. You guys can probably know what it is.
Tootsie, you are a tomato.
Caroline,
no. What's that one where he started? I think it was with
Wag the Dog.
Gilda Radner or something, and they just lost it on the set with the director. They just lost it.
No.
What was that one?
You're not thinking about the one with Lily Tomlin and that's Lily Tomlin and Dustin Hoffman,
right?
From,
and they were sitting in the car.
Yeah.
And they
I Heart Huckabees.
Lost it. Both of them lost it, and he was
the director screaming at them.
Yes.
And Caroline actually wrote, "I saw To Sir with Love. I was a teenager and knew I wanted to be a teacher." She also wrote Mr. Holland's Open, filled me with inspiration.
Opus.
What did I say?
Get me Mr. Holland's Open.
And then Forrest Gump resonated with her. Also, a lot of Robin Williams movies. I think Forrest Gump resonated with many. The Forrest Gump was an incredible.
Yeah.
And you know what movie we're forgetting too is Back to the Future.
Chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Back to the Future. Talk about a movie about fun and escape. My God. And age appropriate, no matter what age you are.
That's age appropriate. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Ben, final thoughts of.
I just, I was thinking about this discussion. What I'm kind of coming away with is that the movies that we had coming of age didn't condescend to us, didn't talk down to us. We sort of treated us like adults, respected the audience. And I think some of what we've got now, and with Pixar maybe being the exception to the rule, a lot of it is just kind of condescending and safe more than anything else. It's safe.
I happen to think I agree with you.
way.
I think creativity has been lost in schools. I think creativity has been lost in the university systems.
You think?
I think when you only have one point of view, you only have one sort of writer.
And even in movies, even in television, it's been lost because we have to, or we don't have to, but we are abiding by some other rule that we don't even understand what it is.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I'm going to do my best Judah impersonation. Tomorrow's Wednesday.
I did say Big Wednesday, didn't I?
Well, that's separate. That's John Milius. But of course, in California, Southern California, they have a lot of palm trees. That's another Judah. I'm just doing my Judahs.
Yes. Thank you.
You're the worst.
You do it very well, Louis.
You know what was a successful movie
So is
franchise?
Judah now an adjective? Just so
Star Wars.
Is that now an adjective?
No, he's just his restatement of the obvious is genius.
No, but Louis.
It's like Larry King's USA Today column that Norm Macdonald used to satirize.
Hey,
I have no tolerance for rape.
Louis. I'm just happy you're making Kim laugh so you could keep going.
Kim, you missed the part at the beginning.
If it makes you feel better,
I need to laugh today.
if it makes you feel better to laugh at me, Louis, to hide your own insecurities.
No. Kim, you missed
laugh.
the part at the beginning. Now picture this. Picture like a 7-year-old Judah. So you just shrink him to 7. He's in he's seeing his first movie in a theater.
3.
In English, not in Yiddish, with English subtitles. And it's The Black Stallion. And 7 or so minutes into the movie, he starts running around this theater, like the Loews in the Bronx. And Phil Friedman, his father, just takes off his belt because he's hyperactive and he's
I can't
sick.
sit
He can't
still.
sit down.
I saw a horse. I wanted to be the horse.
So
I
this
was running
kid-
around.
This kid's running around this enormous movie palace. And Phil Friedman takes off his belt makes a loop of it and is just trying to chase.
Did not happen. Lewis, please, that did not happen. My father was very gentle at that one moment and sat me down when he caught me. And I honestly don't know if we actually went back into the movie theater to finish up the movie.
Yeah, something tells me you didn't.
My son has done the same stuff to me.
Every son has done that. What son hasn't run around the movie?
I'd be in a different city and he would just jump on the elevator and go. And I couldn't find him.
That's what boys
you
do.
You just can't jump on elevators where I can't find you.
That's the point of this. Boys are no longer allowed to be boys. Okay. When we were little kids, Ben, this goes to what you're saying. In your neighborhood, they're riding bikes. But when we were little kids, we were being boys. I mean, boys were, show me a boy that doesn't eat dirt. Okay.
Oh, we'd roam the neighborhoods.
You just roam the neighborhoods,
My son eats sand. Why does he eat sand? I don't know.
All you needed to have fun was chalk, or you take a broomstick and have a ball and you'd play stickball and you'd figure stuff out. And I really think Caroline agrees with me. My brother and I used to do crazy stuff as kids. Yes, that's what kids did. Producer girlfriend, you did a ton of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
that could be a future show. Crazy stuff we did as kids.
I mean, the story that you're a certain family member leaving certain food products hidden in couches.
Oh yeah, my brother liked to eat raw beef hot dogs, and he would eat half of it and then hide the other half in couch cushions for later. So he would just be walking around with the hot dog after hours, and you don't know where he got it until we cleaned the couch cushions and found like a stash of hot dogs. What's funny is his 2-year-old son is doing the same thing today.
Well, I'll tell you something. Judah would have a nice little nest egg right now if we could go back in time and lease his father out to different families around the country. And he just comes with that belt and just starts chasing kids.
I'm
gonna give you a crack.
Lewis, you have a lot of projection in you today. And I'm sorry that your father abused you as a child with a belt strap. But thank God my father was of a different generation, and he was a soft and kind soul. And I'm sorry for the abuse, Lewis, that you went through as a kid. But the good thing is you've changed, you've broken the chain.
Right.
You are a loving father to one of the most beautiful girls and smart girls in America, if not.
Thank you. World. But I still have that image of someone could just pick up the phone back like circa 1978 on a rotary phone. You dial 711 and you would get him and he'd come out. I'm coming. You know who I just called? Is he going to get you?
Yeah, and Caroline wrote, my mother
we used to have fear. We stopped having fear from parents.
Caroline wrote and she says she's very sorry. Her mother was a lot like your father. Lewis says so. But Lewis has shown you can break the chains. He's also shown us you can shave a beard. Right. And I
didn't shave it.
And he was
Who shaved it?
Someone I presume is here legally.
And on that note, if you just tuned in, we are wrapping up. You're listening to the 4 Esoterics. It's at the number 4 ESOTERICS. Subscribe to us at the Apple Podcast Store. Like us on YouTube. Subscribe there, and steal somebody's phone and like us on Twitter. We will. No problems with begging you to do that. Ben, final words.
This is a great topic. We could probably explore it again at some point.
It's so much fun, right?
Yeah, and the idea is that there's so much good. Popular culture can be a wasteland, but there's still a lot of good stuff out there, and stuff we need to share with our kids. So
exactly, Lewis? we need to hold on to.
Yeah, that's right, and preserve and cherish.
Yeah, no, it's extremely important. That's the fun thing about this, producer girlfriend and her 7 Emmys and film school, me with and all of us having our different movies and things that have affected us and touched us in our lives. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. Caroline, thank you for saying it was a fun show. John, thanks for tuning in. Phil, thank you for your amazing knowledge and being the greatest publicist for people and one beautiful woman two beautiful women could ever ask for. And
The next show.
sorry?
I wanted to tease the next show idea.
Tease the next show, which might not be on Friday, though.
It's fine.
Correct.
Still the next show.
The
Still
next show. Today we discussed movies you want your kids to see. Next show are films you do not want your kids to see for whatever reason, or
Clockwork Orange.
perhaps, yeah.
Sorry,
There
Kim?
you go.
What did you say,
Clockwork
Kim?
Orange.
A Clockwork Orange, right?
Or perhaps there's a director or a movie that's really acclaimed that everyone should see, but we don't. We think it's crap. You know what I mean? Something like that. Movies that we think are either overrated or you don't want your kids to see.
Oh, Lewis is going to have a field day with movies that he thinks are overrated. I could just see his head churning right now, wanting to blast out those names of his most overrated.
I know. I'm seeing his eyes. He's going crazy already.
Of his most overrated directors of all time. I see.
All I can see is like a Tom and Jerry. It's them in shadow. It's Judah in front and the father with the belt, and you see that on the screen.
And and Lewis, the great projector. I am so sorry for your traumatic childhood, but we hope we brought you a little bit of enjoyment and fun to get over your past. And catch us either next on Saturday if we're all available, but definitely next Tuesday. Like us again at the Four Esoterics. Ben, take us out with something sweet and special.
Why?
You're gonna get naked?
Why? Yeah. Why do you put me on the spot like
Because I
that?
love doing it, Ben. Because you know why? I love your shirt, Ben. I got to tell you, this is the best shirt I've ever seen you wear, and please wear it more often. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Four Esoterics and watching us. And I want to thank Ben, Lewis, even, of course, Kim, and always give a big hand to producer girlfriend who does amazing work. Thank you, everybody. We will see you soon.